Stephen had never planned to stay in the countryside. He came back only because his life in the city had collapsed all at once. One evening, he walked into his apartment and found his wife in the arms of his best friend. In that moment, something inside him went cold. He did not scream. He did not throw punches. He did not beg for explanations. He simply opened the door, looked at the man he had once called a friend, and told him to get out. Then he turned to his wife and said in a voice so calm it frightened even him, "I'm leaving for the village for a month. Be kind enough to remove your things from my apartment before I return. I hope we won't have any disagreements. Otherwise, I'll make sure the whole city knows exactly who you are." His wife worked in local government and was preparing to run for a larger office. Reputation meant everything to her. She snapped back that she could destroy him, erase him from public life, crush him if she wanted to. Stephen only smiled. "You don't have the nerve," he told her. And they both knew he was right. Her career had never been built on strength. It had been luck, timing, and a talent for pushing herself into the right rooms. Stephen saw it clearly now, maybe for the first time. That night he packed a few bags. The next morning, instead of filing for leave from work, he submitted his resignation. He did not even hesitate. Something in him wanted a total break, not a pause. No half measures, no safety rope. If his life had cracked open, then he would let it crack all the way. Before dawn, he got into his car and drove toward the village where his grandfather had once lived. As a child, that place had been his refuge. Summers there had felt endless. He remembered his grandmother's bread, the smell of fresh-cut grass, the old wooden porch that creaked beneath his feet, and his grandfather's weathered hands fixing tools with the patience of a man who understood that most things in life could be repaired if you gave them enough time. Even after his grandmother died, Stephen kept coming back whenever he could. Then school got harder. Life got busier. The city swallowed more and more of him, and the visits became rare. He had tried more than once to bring his grandfather to the city. The old man always refused. "I belong here," he would say. When Stephen finally reached the house, he sat behind the wheel for a moment and just looked at it. Then, to his own surprise, he smiled. The place did not look abandoned. The grass had been cut. The fence stood straight. The path to the porch was clear. Someone had cared for it. Stephen knew exactly who. His neighbor, Nikolai, had been keeping an eye on the place for years, and Stephen had always tried to thank him in small ways. One year, he brought him a new rubber boat. Another time, a cream separator for the household. This time, he had something special in the trunk. A high-end fishing rod Nikolai would never buy for himself, though Stephen knew he had dreamed about owning one for years. He had barely stepped out of the car when he heard a shout. "Stephen, is that really you?" He turned and laughed. Nikolai came striding down the lane, broad-shouldered, sunburned, older than Stephen remembered, but just as solid. They embraced like men who did not need many words to say they were glad the other still existed. "How long has it been?" Nikolai asked, stepping back to look him over. "You staying all summer?" "For a month," Stephen said. "Maybe longer." I haven't decided. Nikolai whistled. That's serious. Then tonight you're coming over. No excuses. I'll heat the bathhouse, grill some meat. You remember my steam room? Stephen groaned theatrically. How could I forget? A man goes in there and comes out reborn. Nikolai laughed and turned to leave, but Stephen stopped him. Wait, I brought you something. He opened the trunk and handed over the case. Nikolai stared at it. Then he opened it and froze. For a second, he looked like he might cry. Stephen, no, this is too much. It's exactly the one you wanted, Stephen said. You've been taking care of the house all these years. Let me do one nice thing for you. Nikolai swallowed hard, then grinned. You always did know how to ruin a man's dignity. Fine. Tonight I'm feeding you till you regret coming back. After he left, Stephen began unloading his bags. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, the tight band around his chest loosened. About an hour later, Nikolai's wife Nina showed up carrying a basket. Thought you might need food, she said, setting it down. You'll be cleaning all day. No point starving. Stephen started to protest out of politeness, but his stomach betrayed him with a loud growl. Nina laughed. Well, there's your answer. As she turned to go, she paused by the gate and looked back. Stephen, thank you for Nikolai. He frowned. For what? For reminding him life can still bring something good. He gets so excited when you come. The other men drink. He goes fishing. They waste time in sheds talking nonsense. He comes here, fixes things, waits for you to visit, like a boy waiting for summer. You make him feel like there's a bigger world than what's left of this village. Stephen looked down, not sure what to say. Nina continued more quietly. After the collective farm collapsed, he was lost. You know that. He loved working with machinery, loved taking things apart and putting them back together. Then everything vanished. He built himself that little homemade tractor, and now he gets by helping people, ploughing, hauling, fixing what he can. But feeding a family on scraps like that? She shrugged. You know how it is. Stephen nodded. He did know. As Nina reached the road, she grinned over her shoulder. Get ready. He's got special birch whisks prepared for you. Went into the woods himself. Stephen groaned again. Tell me where to hide. She laughed. He'll find you anywhere. That evening, the bathhouse nearly killed him. Nikolai's steam room was less a place to relax than a trial by fire. By the time Stephen staggered out into the yard, weak-kneed and dizzy, clutching a cup of tea like it was medicine, he already felt different. Scrubbed clean not just of sweat, but of bitterness. He was still sitting there in a half-dazed state while Nikolai proudly described a monstrous fish he had once caught, when the gate creaked open and a young woman stepped into the yard. Stephen forgot how to breathe. She was not dressed to impress, no makeup, no city polish, no deliberate glamour. But something about her was arresting. Maybe it was the quiet composure in the way she held herself. Maybe it was the weariness in her face that had not managed to dim her beauty. Maybe it was the fact that she looked like a person who had suffered and survived. In a whisper, Stephen asked, "Who is that?" Nikolai answered just as quietly. That's Olesya. Used to work at the local dairy farm. Now she's alone with a son and no steady job. Where's her husband? Nikolai snorted. Gone off chasing a better life. Or so he said. Stephen kept watching. Don't stare like that, Nikolai muttered. Olesya's serious. Doesn't fool around with men. After what she's been through, I think she half hates us all. Nina came out, greeted Olesya warmly, and the women stepped aside to talk. Stephen listened while pretending not to. The story emerged in pieces. Olesya had not been from the village. She had come there after marrying. She was educated, trained as a teacher, but had ended up working with cows because that was the work available. And by all accounts, she had been the best at it. Her animals were always the cleanest, the healthiest, the most productive. But her husband had gambled, piled up debts, and eventually lost their apartment. They moved in with his mother, who made Olesya's life unbearable. Desperate, Olesya scraped together enough money to buy a tiny house in the village and escape. Then, when she had finally saved enough to start repairing it, her husband returned, took the money, and disappeared. She went to the police. They spread their hands helplessly. He was still her legal husband, they said. He had not broken in. He had simply taken what was shared property. Stephen felt anger rise inside him like heat. A little later, Nina came back from speaking with her. Olesya's boy is sick, she explained. She needed medicine and had none. Stephen tried not to show how much that bothered him, but he found his eyes drifting after Olesya even after she had left. Nina noticed, of course. Don't waste your hopes, she said with a teasing smile. For Olesya to even look your way, a man would have to do something extraordinary. Stephen smiled back. You saying I'm not capable of extraordinary things? He turned to Nikolai. By the road, at the edge of the village, what's that big abandoned structure? The old workshop building, Nikolai said. They started new farm facilities there years ago. Then everything fell apart and it was left unfinished. Stephen looked toward the darkness where the outline of the building sat against the horizon. Could it be turned into something useful? Nikolai and Nina exchanged a glance. With work? Sure, Nikolai said slowly. Why? Stephen stared into his tea for a moment. A thought had begun forming. Wild, impractical, impossible. And yet, it would not leave him alone. I have an idea, he said. If you're willing to help me, I think the two of us could build something real here. Nina blinked. You mean open a farm? Maybe more than a farm. Stephen stood up. Let me think tonight. I need numbers, costs, markets, logistics. Tomorrow I'll tell you if I've lost my mind. 4 years passed, and Stephen had not lost his mind. He had found it. The farm he started became the first thing in his adult life that truly belonged to him, not to the city, not to his ruined marriage, not to some boss behind a desk. At first it was just a modest dairy operation. Then came a milk processing shop. Later, a meat division. Then distribution contracts. And now he was seriously considering opening his own stores in the city because he was tired of wholesalers squeezing his prices while pretending they were doing him a favor. Nikolai became his right hand, master of everything mechanical. He managed equipment, repairs, vehicles, and a small team that followed his instructions without question. He never became arrogant. If anything, responsibility made him gentler. Recently, Stephen had noticed textbooks on electrical systems and industrial maintenance in Nikolai's office. Nikolai admitted, embarrassed, that he wanted to study formally by correspondence. "I'm some kind of manager now," he said awkwardly. "Feels wrong not to have the education for it." Stephen had felt absurdly proud. In many ways, life had turned out even better than he once would have dared imagine. Except for one thing. Olesya. He had won her trust, but only after patience that nearly destroyed him. They had been together for years now, though never as often as he wanted, because work consumed them both. Stephen loved her with a steadiness that felt nothing like the fever of youth. This was deeper, harder earned, more frightening. He knew exactly what he wanted. Marriage. He had proposed, and Olesya had looked at him with those thoughtful eyes and said, "I need time. Don't rush me." Don't rush her. He had nearly choked on the insult. 4 years. 4 years was apparently not enough to know whether she wanted to marry him. Was she planning to make him walk beside her for another decade first? Still, beneath the annoyance sat fear. Because lately she had seemed distant, distracted. And though Stephen had a warm relationship with her son, Maxim, something about Olesya's silence had begun to worry him. That morning, he drove to the farm intending to speak with her seriously. He was done waiting for the right moment. As he stepped from the car, he spotted a cat near the barn and instantly felt irritation flare. The cats had become a constant problem. Every fall, people from the nearby summer houses abandoned unwanted pets near the farm, assuming someone else would take care of them. The workers fed them. Soon, there were too many. It was unsanitary. Once a cat had fallen into a vat of milk and ruined the entire batch. Stephen had exploded. Everyone got scolded, including Olesya. He had finally issued an ultimatum. "If there's still a single cat on this farm next week," he said, "I'll call animal control." The women had glared at him. Olesya, more hurt than angry, had quietly asked, "And where do you think they'll go?" After that, the cats began disappearing. Then disappeared completely. At the time, Stephen thought the workers had finally listened. Now, as he stood near the barn, he saw Olesya in the distance, moving quickly, looking over her shoulder as if she did not want to be seen. She was not heading toward the dairy building. She was going somewhere else. A dark thought hit him so hard it felt physical. His mind threw him backward into the old apartment, into that doorway, into that single image of betrayal that had never truly left him. He told himself Olesya was not like his ex-wife. But then again, once upon a time he had thought his ex-wife was not like that either. He clenched his jaw and followed. Bushes and growing dusk hid him. His imagination did the rest. Maybe Olesya's former husband had returned. Maybe she had been secretly helping him. Maybe she still loved him. Maybe she had been running to him all this time, while Stephen built a future for the three of them like a fool. When she slipped inside the abandoned workshop at the edge of the village, Stephen's thoughts hardened into certainty. That's it, he told himself. The husband is hiding there. Anger and humiliation flooded him so fast he could barely see. He burst from the bushes, crossed the yard in long strides, yanked the heavy door open, and stormed inside. Then he stopped. On a bale of hay sat Olesya. She was surrounded by cats. Cats everywhere. Thin cats, limping cats, half-wild cats, nursing cats, old cats, abandoned cats with torn ears and sad eyes. Olesya was kneeling in the middle of them, setting food into bowls one by one, while they circled around her in a living sea of fur. For a moment, Stephen could only stare. Olesya turned, saw him, and her expression hardened instantly. "Stephen, what are you doing here?" He opened his mouth, but no good answer came. "I saw you come this way," he muttered. She stood up slowly. "So you thought what? That you'd catch me in something shameful?" Her voice sharpened. "You followed me?" Stephen felt like a complete idiot. He tried to explain. The words sounded pathetic even to him. Olesya's face changed. Not softer exactly, but more wounded. "I didn't think you were this kind of man," she said. "To treat abandoned animals like a nuisance. To threaten them like they're garbage." He flinched. "I wasn't going to actually call animal control," he said. "You women turned the farm into a feeding ground. You know we can't run a dairy operation like that. You're smart enough to understand where your wages come from." She let out a long breath, and some of the anger left her. "I know," she said quietly. "I know all of that. I just didn't know what else to do. They would die." The cats kept eating around them, oblivious. Then, unexpectedly, Stephen smiled. "What if they don't have to?" Olesya frowned. "What?" He looked around the empty building, the old workshop, strong walls, space, potential. "What if we turn this place into a shelter?" She stared at him as though she had misheard. "I'm serious," he said. "Nikolai can help fix it up. The farm can provide food at first. We can post online, ask for support, try to place the animals in homes. Why not? We already have the building." Olesya just looked at him. "You're not joking?" "No." That was how it began. 2 months later, the first scruffy survivors left for new homes. What had once been a forgotten ruin became a small rescue center. Olesya, who no longer worked as a milkmaid, ran it with the same care she once gave her cows. She celebrated every adoption like a child being sent into a good life. A month after that, she finally said yes. Stephen never forgot the feeling of hearing it, the relief, the joy, the disbelief, the ridiculous urge to laugh and cry at the same time. He felt like a man who had wandered out of a frozen landscape and suddenly found spring waiting for him. And life, apparently, was not done surprising him. On their wedding day, Olesya, who was 36 then, leaned close and told him she had a special gift planned for his 40th birthday. He spent weeks trying to guess what it was. He joked, bargained, begged. He told her he did not need gifts, that he already had everything that mattered, that her mysterious smile was going to drive him insane. Finally, she handed him an ultrasound image. For a second, he did not understand what he was seeing. Then he did. The child. Their child. The tiny human life already growing inside her. Stephen cried without shame. He hugged Olesya. He hugged Nina. He hugged Nikolai. He scooped up Maxim. He kissed cats. He embraced half the wedding guests like a man overcome by some beautiful madness. And Olesya watched him, smiling through her own tears, thinking that maybe happiness really can come even to the people who stopped believing in it, maybe especially to them. Because sometimes a man goes to the countryside believing he is only hiding from pain, and instead he finds the place where his real life begins. If this touched you, like the video and subscribe to the channel for new stories.